From across the great Rocky Mountains, beyond the vast and blue Atlantic Ocean, the Cascadian Union is pleased to bring you this feature presentation.
Hello and welcome. I am the Cascadian Archival Interface, or more simply put, CAI. I am the informational matrix installed by the Cascadian Union after the completion of the first Cascadian Commons in the year 2030. Centered in Vancouver, British Columbia, the Commons remains an enduring symbol of Cascadian ingenuity and spirit. Let us begin.
The Cascadian Commons adopts a familiar organizational logic within the context of civic buildings, whereby the auxiliary factions of the structure's operation and governance are laid out in three distinct wings that demonstrate a clear axiality in relation to the site and its surroundings. Positioned within the city's infamous Stanley Park, a large temperate urban rainforest ecosystem, the Commons is located on the northwestern port harbor of the Vancouver Peninsula. Vancouver is a large coastal metropolis situated on the Pacific Ocean with various protected ecological and First Nations territories within its urban bounds, highlighted here in green and red respectively. Additionally, this map serves to contextualize key sites of consideration within the city. The Commons is an architectural response to a growing secessionist movement in the Pacific Northwest, in which their peoples with their own values and local challenges aim to create a new union under one name, Cascadia. Considering the rapid acceleration of population and economic growth, Cascadia is one of the most prosperous regions on the planet with an ecosystem that has been largely untouched by the forces of industrialization. Through a series of mapping exercises comparing native cultural regions and contemporary urban economic regions, I was able to speculate on potential secessionist movements in North America. This helped to further the logic behind creating a Cascadian Union bridging the U.S.-Canada border. This bilateral form of citizenship allows multiple nations and bodies to have governmental influence over the region and its people. Inspired by the architectural optimism and cultural exchange of 20th century expos, I turned to archival footage for design inspiration.
We are told we are too dreamy and are not Canadian enough.
That man masters nature, not by force, but through understanding.
There it is! At last, the Seattle World's Fair. Crossroads of the universe.
From Asia came not only trade, but new citizens too.
The artists think there is too much pink in Vancouver just now.
In response to the unit brief, and in establishing material provenance for the Cascadian Commons, I began to take a closer look into plastic polymers and timber to find their uses and applications within contemporary design practice. These materials were chosen not only for their aesthetic and tactile properties, but also for their ease of availability within the region. Softwood timbers like Douglas fir and red cedar grow in abundance within the region and are excellent construction materials. Plastics, however, have a dirtier reputation. Plastic is nothing short of a modern wonder, but is often an architectural taboo that we shy away from as designers. Canadians in particular use 3 times more plastic than the average person. However, single-use plastics can be recycled and reformed. The Commons takes Vancouverites' waste material and transforms it into something useful and beautiful. In a closer analysis of different subclassifications of plastic, I determined that PET, HDPE, PVC, and polyurethane foam were the most useful and economical building materials. I proceeded with a series of digital material tests demonstrating the interactions between rigid timber structures and malleable plastic and foam forms. This workflow was achieved using 3ds Max as modeling tool and Corona as a visualization renderer. Further fluid simulation tools such as TieFlow help to accurately simulate the properties of soft body forms. While these digital tests were largely successful in aiding my design process, they lacked a certain tactility that needed to be understood physically. A concept model, dubbed the Foam Finder, allowed me to study foam's properties with greater intimacy and unforeseen spontaneity. Once these material outlooks had been established, I attempted to contextualize a plastic and timber architecture, first through sketch development, before moving on to render the structure in a 3D simulated Cascadian environment. While proving to be an intuitive response, this first attempt neglected the architectural context of both the region and the established canon of civic architecture. 5 primary influences can be said to be responsible for Cascadia's civic language: indigenous vernacular architecture, European alpine and nomadic architecture, Gothic Revival/Canadian Chateauesque, Art Deco and Art Nouveau, and lastly, American Neoclassical. Taken together, I was moved to use natural tropes and styles within my invented Cascadian order to inspire, akin to the Viennese secessionist movement. The first look inside the Commons began with the most bureaucratic space imaginable, the corridor. This exploration aimed to incorporate as many Cascadian typologies as possible. Inspired by marine tropes, this material application later became universally applied throughout the structure. Here you can observe the various skins and components of both plastic and timber materialities undulate and peel away from the structure through the use of plastic panels, foam furs, and inflatable PVC bubbles. Going forward, I began to apply these typologies en masse and created a model of the council chambers predicated on the adaptation of Gothic, Neoclassical, Alpine, and Art Deco influences. As well, I began to entertain the notion of rainwater collection and ecological dioramas within the structure as a method of putting Cascadia on display. Upon visiting Vancouver, I was immediately drawn to Brockton Point Lighthouse within Stanley Park. The lighthouse is a historic structure in the park's history. Having been constructed in 1914, the lighthouse is emblematic of a time in Vancouver's past, a kitsch monument with sightlines to major Vancouver landmarks. The lighthouses also became an important opportunity for generating income. Canada has a lot of decommissioned lighthouses, 976 to be exact. These structures cost the government a large sum to maintain each year. Therefore, the Canadian government subsidizes private stakeholders who are willing to maintain these historic sites. However, in choosing a coastal location, I needed to consider the risks and causes of flooding and erosion that exist within Vancouver. The site is a classic example of flooding and erosion as caused by deforestation. As trees are uprooted, erosion accelerates and water tables rise. This became the basis for rethinking coastal retaining walls. The building gradually breaks down the concrete seawall and replaces it with a tiered landscape to restore native tidal conditions. This helps to create new opportunities for coastal reforestation and rewilding within the harbor. As aforementioned, the Commons has an axial winged configuration. The northern wing stems from the lighthouse to access the primary marina within the Port Harbor shipping channel. The western wing houses the council chambers and a Bureau of Ecology, and the eastern wing houses the building's cultural faculties, a library, archive, oratorium, and gallery. The cultural wing serves to document and preserve the history of Cascadia, but it also aims to educate. Before entering these spaces, the occupant is made to travel through a memorial space for the Coast Salish to grieve and remember those that they lost as a result of colonial tyranny. This serves as a reminder to the people of Cascadia not to repeat past evils and to consider the pursuit of utopia for all. The main hall became the nexus and focal point of the Cascadian Commons. Here you can observe an exploded overview of the various components that make up the structure. Timber members are housed between and beneath plastic skins that both protect and enhance building performance, as well as protect the timber from excess moisture. In drawing a detailed section of the main hall, I demonstrated the functions of these components to illustrate a building that thoroughly considers efficient performance in sub-zero winter seasons as well as in the mid of sweltering summer heat. By visualizing this section, I realized that many of these components could be more effectively understood and explained through a series of 3D drawings. An animated cutaway section was created to show these components and their interactions between various systems and spaces, as well as the filtration of water downwards from the roof towards the moat structure. I viewed the building's thermal performance as a dynamic force. Insulation was brought forward from behind the walls and put on display using polyurethane foam panels that could be added and removed contingent on the external climate. As well, these window niches became an opportunity to funnel water in a performative manner. I designed a standardized foam panel system inspired by the local popularity of flagstone. Dark, heavy stones were replaced by soft, colorful foam cushions that act as powerful insulators. In the summer seasons, these panels can be removed and stored to encourage ventilation and airflow between spaces. In using Vancouver's wet climate to my advantage, I designed a roof structure to use water as a tool. The Cascadian spire demonstrates the use of steep roofs to control water filtration and egress while maintaining their utility as snow guards under extreme winter conditions. Large PVC bladders hang from the roof to collect water during the wet season. As they swell, they celebrate water as a structural ornament. During the dry season, the bladders are unhooked and used as liquid beanbag seating for occupants' repose. Inspired by the Salish mythology of the Thunderbird, I wanted to design a mobile office structure that directly interacted with the coastal environment. These mobile offices employ large inflatable pontoons that steady them in deep seas and turbulent marine environments to protect the occupants as well as any equipment that resides within the structure.
Breaker 19er, we got a bit of a situation over here. Some real choppy waters. We're just gonna deploy our pontoons on dispatch. Over.
With these mobile structures, I needed to consider the supporting infrastructure and its connection to the mainland. Large ports housing sewage pipelines, water mains, and electrical charging points were designed in conjunction with the mobile offices to deploy essential services. In designing these typologies, I recognized their appeal and use for advertising, whereby their pontoons and service stations could generate income from Cascadian companies willing to sponsor their upkeep. Where the traditional civic structure is costly and conventional, the Cascadian Commons is radical and profitable.